Noon pa man, malaki na ang naging bahagi ng mga kababaihan sa lipunang Pilipino. Kaisa sila sa marubdob na paghahangad ng kalayaan ng ating lahi. Kabilang sila sa paglinang ng ating makulay na sining at mayamang kultura. Kasapi sila sa pagtataguyod ng mga adhikain ng kapwa mamamayan at sa pagtugon sa mga pangangailangan ng lipunan. Katuwang sila sa pagtuklas sa mga larangan ng agham at medisina. Kapanalig sila sa pagpapairal ng batas, karapatan at katarungan para sa lahat. Kabahagi sila sa paglilingkod sa bayan at sa pagpapanatili ng demokrasyang Pilipino. Sa paglipas ng panahon, hindi nagmaliw ang kanilang pag-ibig sa ating inang bayan. Mga kababayan, ito ang alay ng mga kababaihang Pilipino para sa bayan. Tumayo po tayong lahat at sabay-sabay nating awitin ang pambansang awit ng Pilipinas.
Ayaw magiliw, dala sa silanganan, alam ng puso, sa dilim mo'y buhay. Lumang hiniram, dulot ka ng magiging, sa manlulupi, di ka masisingil, sa lahat ng tulog, sa sino at sa langit mong bahang, maginagang tula at awit sa paglayang minamahal. Ang isang ng matawad mo'y tagumpay na nagilingin, ang bituin at araw na kailan pa may limadilin. Lumarang araw ng walhati pagsika, buhay ay langit sa piling mo. Ang higaya ng pagpay makakamit, ang mamatay ng dahil sa'yo.
Good day everyone, Mom Sir. I am here to discuss how to be gender sensitive and why do we need to be sensitive when it comes to gender. So I am Irene. I am from Primsu Candelario campus. So before we begin discussing on how to be gender sensitive, it is important for us to know the basic concepts of sex and gender. What are the differences between the two? Sex is based on the anatomy or the structure of our human body. It is a biological characteristic of being a male or female physical attributes pertaining to a person's body contours, features, hormones, genes, chromosomes, and reproductive organs. So there are two main categories of sex, a male and a female. An example of biological characteristic is having a penis. If you have a penis, you are categorized as a male. And if you have an ovary, you are categorized as a female. So aside from female and male categories, there is what we call intersex. Intersex refers to a person born with some combinations of male and female characteristics. So while in gender, it refers to socially constructed roles, behaviors, expressions, and identities of girls, women, boys, men, and gender diverse people. So basically, the gender of a person is based on or influenced by a person's environment, including the culture, the family, at saka yung mga taong nakapaligid sa kanila. So a gender can be either masculine or feminine. What is feminine? Feminine is described as having qualities or an appearance traditionally associated with women, like for example, wearing dress, wearing high heels, or having a long hair. While masculine is described as having qualities or an appearance traditionally associated with men, like wearing pants or shorts or having a short hair. So basically, a gender of a person do not depend on a person's sex. So if you are a female, you may be described as masculine, or because you are wearing pants, or you do not like wearing heels, or you do not like long hair. Or if you are a male, you may be described as feminine, or it could be both. So a gender identity is based on a person's sexual orientation. So what do we mean first by gender identity? It is one's innermost concept of self as male, female, a blend of both or neither. So it is how individuals perceive themselves and how they call themselves. One's gender identity can be the same or different from their sex assigned at birth. So it is based on the person's sexual orientation. So, in short, gender identity is how you see yourself, how you identify yourself. It could be the same sex assigned at birth, or it could be different, meaning kapag pinanganak ang babae, pwedeng maging ang iyong gender identity ay pwedeng maging babae pa din paglaki mo, or it could be different, the opposite gender or other gender. So this is based on sexual orientation. What is sexual orientation? It refers to romantic or sexual attractions toward persons of the opposite sex or gender, the same sex or gender, to both sexes or more than one gender, or to no one. So there are 4 types of sexual orientation. The first one is heterosexual. Heterosexual are those persons who are attracted to the opposite sex or gender. So, for example, straight men or women. Straight men are emotionally and sexually attracted to their opposite sex or gender, who is a female or a straight female. And if you are a straight woman or female, you are emotionally and sexually attracted to your opposite sex or gender, who is a man or a male. The second sexual orientation is bisexual. So, bisexual persons are those persons who are attracted to both gender or sexes. So, for example, if you are a male, you are attracted to both gender, who is a male or female, and vice versa. The third type of sexual orientation is homosexual. So, from the term homo, which means one or same, these are persons who are attracted to their same sex or gender. For example, lesbians. Lesbians are basically female in terms of sex, and they are attracted to their same sex, who are also a female. And also, another example are those gays. Gays are basically male in terms of sex. They are attracted to same sex or gender, who are also a male. So the last type is asexual. Asexual persons are those who lack attraction towards anyone, yes. So they are not attracted to anyone. And aside from these four types of sexual orientation, there is what we call cisgender. These are persons whose gender identity corresponds with their assigned gender at birth. So if you were born as a boy, you will grow up as a man. So nag-match yung gender niya at birth at nung paglaki niya. While transgender, those person whose gender identity differs from their assigned gender at birth. So for example, pinanganak kang girl, paglaki mo, for example, nag-iba ang iyong gender. Naging male ka na or masculine na ang iyong description in terms of your gender identity. So, a gender identity is described through gender expression. Gender expression, external appearance of one's gender identity. It is usually expressed through our behavior, our actions, ang ating clothing, ang ating haircut, or voice, or which may or may not conform to socially defined behaviors and characteristics typically associated with being either masculine or feminine. So it means that my gender can be also expressed through appearance, through my gender identity can be also expressed in my appearance, sa aking pananamit, sa aking pananalita, sa aking itsura. So, for example, if I usually wear pants or I do not like wearing heels, my gender is associated with being masculine, of course. Or if I am a male in terms of sex, but I express myself through wearing fitted blouses, wearing doll shoes, wearing high heels, I am considered as being feminine. So gender expression can be also expressed through gender roles. Gender roles, these are learned behaviors in given society or community of social groups and influenced by perception and expectation. So traditionally, women were perceived to be assigned in-house chores or those activities inside the house, while men were perceived to do outside activities such as gardening. So these gender roles were constructed or nanggaling or nagawa, na-construct through expectations from other people and perceptions of the community we belong. So I will be projecting different gender roles and think if it is what gender role, or think if it is for feminist or masculinist. So the first picture is cooking. Is it for boys or girls? Second picture is driving. Ang mga babae lang ba? Para lang ba sa mga lalaki o para din ito sa mga kalalaki? Para lang ba sa mga kalalakihan to or pwede rin sa mga babae or to other gender? All gender. The third picture is babysitting. So, para lang ba sa mga nanay to or para din sa mga tatay or para kay kuya or ate? Yan, yung mga tanggera dyan, tol, para lang ba sa mga lalaki to? Or gumagawa din yung mga babae ng pag-inom ng mga hard drinks? Next picture is construction works. So, sa mga nakikita natin, para lang ba sa mga lalaki to or pwede rin sa mga girls to? What do you think? So, sino yung gender na usually or easily gets emotional? Sino yung mga gender na pwedeng maglaro ng sports na to? Boxing. So, lahat ng mga nabanggit natin, gender roles, ay pwede to both sexes or all genders. So, we are all entitled to have the same roles. Di porket babae ka, di ka na pwedeng gumawa ng mga panglalaking mga activities. Or di porket lalaki ka, hindi ka pwedeng umiyak. That is not true. So, lahat tayo, male, female, ano man ang gender mo, lahat tayo entitled tayo sa mga nabanggit na gender roles. So, these gender roles we learned are conditioned by these institutions, which are family, school, church, media, and state. Of course, lahat ng mga inaakala nating mga gender roles or mga natutunan nating gender roles ay nakadepende sa mga nakikita natin or nakadepende sa mga nakakasalamuha natin, sa mga experiences natin. Katulad, so number 1 na nakaka-influence sa atin na yung mga kasama natin sa bahay, ang family natin. Sila yung nagtuturo sa atin, maliit pa lang tayo, kung ano dapat yung gender role na ginagawa natin. So, malaking influence din sa atin ng mga pinapanood nating mga idol natin sa TV, television, yung mga artista na nagsisilbing role model natin. So, however, there are problems we encounter that limits our gender roles. One problem is gender stereotyping. What is it? It is a generalized view or preconception about attributes or characteristics or the roles that are or ought to be possessed by or performed by women and men or girls and boys. So, an example of gender stereotyping is kung lalaki ka, dapat di ka umiiyak. Or kapag babae ka, dapat hindi ikaw yung nanliligaw ng lalaki. Dapat hayaan mo siyang manligaw sa'yo. Or lalaki ka, dapat ikaw yung magpulis, hindi yung asawa mong babae. Ito yung mga paniniwala natin kung saan nagkakaroon tayo ng expectation sa behavior ng isang tao na nakadepende sa kanyang sex or gender. So, nagge-generalize tayo ng attitude or traits or behavior pattern ng isang tao. So, these are more examples of gender stereotyping. Colors of blue are only for boys, while pink are for girls. Toy cars are given to boys, while dolls are given to girls. Boys are better in mathematics than girls, and girls speak words better than boys. Is that true? Of course, it is not applicable to everyone. These are just an example. So, because of gender stereotyping, we often forget that men are best cook too. So, hindi lang si nanay yung magaling magluto. Pwede rin si kuya, pwede rin sa tatay. So, si Gordon James Ramsay, siya yung nagpapatunay na magaling din ang mga kalalakihan sa pagluluto. Another, women are best race car driver. So, pinatunayan niya ni Gabby de la Merced. Siya ang took public interest when she became one of the few Filipinas that dominate the Asian Formula 3 circuit. So, sa mga nabanggit nating gender roles kanina, hindi lang yung mga lalaki ang kaya mag-thrive, pati yung mga babae. Men can do babysitting, of course. Para sa akin nga, ang mga lalaki ang mas nakakapagpatulong nga sa mga baby kaysa si nanay. So, in some other countries, working students usually applies for babysitters to support their financial needs for their studies. So, they can do babysitting. It become trend nowadays. So, women can be drunkards too. Hindi lang yung mga lalaki. Purkit alak, lalaki kagad. Siyempre, meron din mga babaeng mga manginginom. So, wag natin husgahan yung mga lalaki kaagad kasi yung mga babae, sila yung usually na manginginom sa labas kasama mga friends. So, research shows it is wives hitting the bottle, not husband, that is leading to as many as 1 in 7 marriage breakups. So, dahil yung mga manginginom babae, sila yung nagkukos kadalasan ng mga breakups sa pagdating sa marriage. So, women are good workers too. Pinatunayan yan ng diverse group of 13 women professionals na pinangunahan ni Mali Golanco, so president of WGCC, the Women in Construction Foundation Incorporated. So that was 1997. So we women kaya din nating gumawa ng mga panglalaking activities such as construction. So, it is okay for men to cry like Senator Bato. Culture's view of male crying has continued to evolve nowadays into our day. While we still expect men to cry less than women, in some cases it has now become more acceptable for a man to cry than a woman, at least when it comes to our public officials. So, women are also fighters, hindi lang mga lalaki. Kasi kadalasan ng mga nakikita natin sa TV, mga lalaki yung mga fighters, sa boxing, sa, what do you call this, wrestling. So, pwede ring magawa ng mga babae. Katunayan si Josie Gabuco. Tinaguri ang Punching Princess. So, that was during 2012. So, these problems in gender stereotyping leads to division of labor and gender bias. Anong ibig sabihin ng division of labor? It refers to the way each society divides work among men and women, boys and girls, according to socially established gender roles or what is considered suitable and valuable for each sex. So, dahil sa mga pinaniwalaan natin mga gender stereotypes or paniniwalang dapat ganito yung behavior ng isang babae or isang lalaki, nagkakaroon tayo ng tinatawag nating division of labor kung saan for example, sa bahay, si nanay at tatay nagdi-divide sila ng kanilang duties and responsibilities. So, sinasabing ang mga babae dapat naka-assign sa mga anak, naka-assign sa loob lang ng bahay, while those men are assigned at work. So, sila dapat yung nagpo-provide ng needs ng family. So, dahil dito sa division of labor among sexes and gender, nagkakaroon ng gender bias. So, sa gender bias, it is a behavior that shows favoritism toward one gender over another. So, for example, For example, receptionists are usually female and maintenance personnel are usually male. So, why is that so? Bakit kadalasang babae ang na-assign sa frontline? Dahil ba accommodating yung mga babae? Dahil ba madaldal ang mga babae? Dahil entertaining? So, bakit yung mga lalaki ay usually naka-assign sa maintenance? Is it because tingin nila walang alam ang babae how to work on it? So obviously, there is a gender bias. So we should always think that both genders can be a receptionist and maintenance personnel. So these are the manifestations of gender bias. One is marginalization. It means treating someone as unimportant or insignificant or worthless. So, parang pinaparamdam mo na walang pakinabang ang isang tao sa'yo or hindi nakakatulong sa mga bagay-bagay, lalo na sa pagdating sa workplace. Second manifestation is discrimination. It is an unjust treatment to other people based on a person's race, sex, gender, age, and many others. So, nagdi-discriminate ka ng ibang tao kasi feeling mo iba yung pinanggalingan mo sa kanya, iba yung paniniwala mo, magkaiba kayo ng gender. Another is subordination. It is the act of placing a lower status or rank. So, it is usually nangyayari sa workplace natin, lalo na kapag yung immediate supervisor natin is may galit sa atin. So, nagkakaroon ng subordination. Yung boss natin, nilalagay tayo sa mas maliit na pwesto kung saan nakaka-receive lang tayo ng maliit na sweldo. So another is multiple burden, stereotyping, division of labor, and violence. These are some of forms of gender bias. So in our country, in the Philippines, marami tayong na-encounter na manifestations of gender bias. Lalong-lalo na ang violence. So violence against women. Noong year 2013, nag-survey, ito ang results ng National Demographic and Health Survey. So, 1 in 5 Filipino women has experienced physical violence since age 15. So, batang-bata pa. 6% have experienced sexual violence. 1/4 of ever married women experience emotional, physical, or sexual violence from their husbands. Only 30% of women sought assistance after being physically or sexually abused. 4% experienced violence while pregnant. 1 in every 10 women is frequently accused by their husbands of being unfaithful. 2 in every ever married women got abused by their alcoholic husband. 8% of ever married women experience domestic violence within the first 2 years of marriage. So kung napapansin nyo, bakit kaya purong babae ang mga biktima ng violence? Nagkakaroon ng gender bias dahil ang paniniwala nila ang mga kababaihan ay mas mahina kaysa mga kalalakihan. Kaya sinasamantala nila yung mga gumagawa ng violence, sinasamantala nila dahil feeling nila hindi sila yung mga victims na mga women and girls. Feeling nila they cannot fight them back. So, girls under 18, according to survey 2014, 3,168 girls experienced abuse. 131 of them were babies under 12 months. So, abuse or violence, walang pinipiling edad. 1,149 girls were abandoned and neglected. 1,150 girls were sexually abused, and many other cases go unreported. So until now, hindi natin masabi kung hanggang ilan, hanggang gaano karami. So araw-araw nagkakaroon ng cases ng child abuse dito sa ating bansa. So we all know that both sexes and all genders experience violence, but women and girls are the most affected by this form of gender bias. So because of these issues affect us in many ways, we need to have gender equality and equity. So what is the difference between the two? Gender equality is achieved when women and men enjoy the same rights and opportunities across all sectors of society, including economic participation and decision making, and when the different behaviors, aspirations, and needs of women and men are equally valued and favored. While gender equity, it refers to fairness or treatment for men and women according to their respective needs. So this picture best explains the difference between equality and equity. So as you can see, in this given situation, we saw three boys watching a game. So the tallest one, sa medyo tall, and the smallest boy. So, in equality, you gave them one box so they can fully see what they are watching. In this situation, you are exercising equality because you gave them number of boxes equally. While in equity, you gave them boxes based on their needs. You will give the highest number of boxes to the smallest boy because he needed it the most, and a box to the mid-tall boy, and nothing to the tallest. In this case, you are exercising equity because you believe that each of them has an equal needs. So how can we achieve this gender equality and equity? We can achieve this through gender sensitivity. So it tries to ensure that people rely less on assumptions about traditional and outdated views on the roles of men and women. So it modifies behaviors to raise awareness of gender equality concerns. So through gender sensitivity, we will not be practicing traditional roles here and assumptions. Instead, we will rely on what we see and what we feel about the person. So, kapag nakikita nating masaya ang person sa kanyang pananamit, sa kanyang actions, then let it be. Masaya ang buhay kapag masaya ang mga taong nakapaligid sa atin dahil alam nila na tanggap natin sila. Gender sensitivity is the act of being sensitive to the ways people think about gender. So, after the gender sensitivity training, hopefully magiging careful na tayo sa mga actions natin, sa mga sasabihin natin, lilimitahin natin ang mga salita na nakakasakit sa ibang gender. So, and of course, nabawasan ang ating misconception about gender concepts. And confident na tayong i-correct ang ibang tao na sa palagay natin ay mali yung paniniwala nila, mali yung pagkakasabi nila sa pagdating sa ganitong bagay. So, gender sensitivity also refers seeing, hearing, counting, and respecting. So, we should always rely on what we see and not on the assumptions or sabi-sabi ng mga nakakatanda. or parang expectation or assumption. So, dapat mag-rely lang tayo kung ano yung nakikita natin, kung ano yung naobserbahan natin. So, we should always hear or listen on the needs and beliefs na problems or perspectives, perceptions ng ibang tao. We should always count or recognize women's work because we need to uplift or empower women because they are the ones we considered as marginalized or nasa laylayan ng ating lipunan. We should always respect all genders. And lastly, we should always care for each other. So gender sensitivity is renaming and reimaging women or men relationships to bring about mutuality and partnership. So it is not men against women. It is not sex. It is not against other gender, but gender sensitivity will help us to become united. And we can also express our gender sensitivity through our language and the way we communicate with other gender or with other people rather. So gender sensitivity often gets expressed through people's language choice. We can choose more inclusive language and use words that are gender neutral. So we limit ourselves in terms of language we use, and we should always prefer to use gender neutral like this one. Instead of men and women, use everyone. Instead of wife or husband, use a spouse. Instead of he or she, use them. Instead of sister or brother, use sibling. Instead of male and female, use human. Instead of girls and boys, use kids. So, for example, I am a gay. I am a gay. So, I sometimes got offended when they call me he or when they call me boy because prefer ko ang she. So, it is better to call me like you or it is better to call gays them or you or instead of he or she. So, when greeting others, avoid ladies, gentlemen, ma'am, sir, girls, guys, and consider using instead, thanks friends, have a great night, good morning folks, hi everyone, and for you, can I get you all something? So why? Shifting to gender inclusive language respects and acknowledges the gender identities of all people and removes assumption. So, be mindful of your language. So, pag uwi nyo sa bahay, these are just some ways to promote gender equality in our daily lives. First one, share household chores and childcare equally. So, mamaya pag uwi nyo sa bahay, sabihin nyo, honey, ako naman dyan. Ako naman magluto. Ako naman mag-alaga. Pahinga ka muna. Bukas ka naman, salit-salit tayo. So, watch for signs of domestic violence. So, syempre, I know na as police officers, kayo yung mga nagiging instrument para mahuli yung mga suspect na gumagawa ng mga ganitong klaseng domestic violence. And support mothers and parents, reject chauvinist and racist attitudes. So what do you mean by chauvinist or chauvinism? It means we are practicing dominism. Parang we are being dominant towards a group or in a group or to a person, while racist, which means you are against a person or you are against a group because you believe magkaiba kayo ng paniniwala, you believe na mali yung isang tao, you believe na mali yung paniniwala ng isang grupo, and magkaiba kayo ng practices. So, minsan nagiging racist ka, minsan nagiging chauvinist ka. So, avoid those trait or characteristic. Help women gain power because women are the marginalized sector. We should always uplift and empower them. Listen and reflect. High diversity, so we should always respect gender differences to promote equality and peace. So these are just simple ways on how to achieve our greatest dream, which is gender fair society. It is where or when all genders enjoy the same opportunities, rights, and obligations in all spheres of life. So now it is the right time to start being gender sensitive. And hopefully, you will become agent in spreading these learnings to the people around us. So mamaya, pag nakalimot yung kasama mo, tapikin mo, sabihin mo, be gender sensitive. Kakatapos lang natin ng gender sensitivity training, dapat di ka nakakalimot. Gender sensitive tayo. So let us just spread peace, love, and happiness. Thank you for watching and listening.
Okay, good day everyone. So this is also part of your training. It's about manifestations of gender bias, wherein you will be able to know whether gender bias exists. Okay. All right. So you can see here in our slide, gender issues and gender bias, framework of understanding the origins of gender issues. Now you can see here that the major problem that we are facing is gender inequality. But that one started with gender discrimination. And then gender discrimination also started with gender bias. And then you can see there that it has started from gender stereotyping. So our aim is to eliminate the root cause. Since we wanted to eliminate the gender inequality, gender discrimination, and gender bias, so we have to eliminate gender stereotyping. It's like parang ano yan eh, parang sa puno. Pag nagtanggal ka ng dahon, mabubuhay pa rin. Pag nagputol ka ng sanga, mabubuhay pa rin. Pag nagputol ka ng trunk, meron pa rin possibility na mabuhay. Pero pag nagtanggal ka ng ugat, so dun pa lang tutumba or mamamatay yung puno. So in our own way, like for example in education, what we are trying to eliminate here is gender stereotypes so that we can contribute in finally eliminating gender inequality. Okay? So let's discuss. So in the next illustration, here is an example of gender stereotype, which may lead to gender bias and then eventually to discrimination and inequality. So you can see in the illustration, boys are doctors, girls are nurses. So because of being male and being female, naaka-assign na yung magiging future mo or magiging profession mo. Okay? So that is an example of gender stereotype which may lead to bias and also discrimination. They might prefer in hiring process, they might now prefer girls. Pag nursing, they might prefer girls. Pag doctors naman, they might prefer boys because of our gender stereotypes. Okay, another example here. Of course, we wanted to have an equality between girls and boys and also other genders. But look at the textbook. So you can see here in the illustration, we are aiming for equality. However, the learning materials that we have will not aid us to achieve that equality. So we also have to look into the textbooks or we have to look into the materials that we are using kung meron nga bang gender bias. Okay, another example of gender stereotypes. So you can see here, Kinderjoy. Sino sa inyo may mga kapatid? Or yung iba, baka may anak na they love Kinderjoy surprises. So you can see meron niyang color blue at saka merong color pink. Na gandun pa rin yung stereotypes na this set of toys are only for boys and this set of toys are only for girls. So see, makikita nyo na very observable pa rin ang gender stereotypes in different areas of our lives. Here are also examples, mga terms lang to, which are also considered as stereotypes. Men are stronger than women. So, paano pag kailangan nung mga parang mas kailangan ng strength na trabaho? They might prefer men over women. Then women are soft and weak. Men are insensitive. Women are very sensitive. Those are just examples of gender stereotypes, which may eventually result to a greater impact. Hindi lang siya natatapos sa stereotyping. So we are also trying to have this training because sometimes normal na sa atin yung mga ganong stereotypes. That's why we have this what we call unconscious bias. That there is existing gender bias, but since we are used to it, nagiging unconscious na tayo na meron palang ganon. Na meron palang bias, na meron palang discrimination, okay? So, what we are trying to do now is to re-educate you so that we will be able to identify kung may bias na ba and discrimination and inequality. Marginalization in terms of economics, or we call this economic marginalization. Here, the process which forces women out into the periphery of economic and social life, on the periphery of decision-making process, diminishing the value of the activities in which they engage. So yun nga, kapag in the hiring process, hindi ka naman natanggap dahil babae ka, na-marginalize ka na economically kasi you cannot participate in economic activities. So hindi ka na nabigyan ng trabaho dahil babae ka. Okay? So that is an economic marginalization. So aside from that, there are still countries wherein mababa pa rin ang sahod para sa mga babae. Okay, here are also some situations which is telling us of economic marginalization. We have women are last to be hired, first to be fired. They are given limited opportunities. Sometimes they are being hired in exchange of sexual favor. So meron pa rin ganyan nangyayari. Then under or non-valuation or recognition of women's work. Diba sa isang organization, meron naman na-accomplish yung babae. If they are not valued or they are not recognized na yun yung gawa nila, there is also gender bias in terms of economics. Yan, gender bias, as I have mentioned, gender bias in hiring, dahil nga sa ating gender stereotypes that some professions are for male, so they prefer male. Some professions are for female, so they will prefer female. So you can see the gender stereotypes can go a long way. Una, label lang sila. Pero eventually, it could lead to bias at it could lead to economic marginalization. Okay? Kaya in our own way, try natin eliminate yung stereotypes. So our vision is to have this equal pay for work of equal value, either male or female professionals, and the economic independence, and then to have equal economic opportunities. Then another problem of women. So you can see here, sometimes daw sa promotion, meron ding inequality. Why? Because yung mga lalaki, wala sila masyadong burdens. They can concentrate do sa work nila. But still, existing pa rin to. Women are still multiple burdened. So, marami pa rin mga professionals na babae na, yeah, they have opportunities. They are professionals. However, in terms of promotion, medyo naglalag behind sila because of multiple burdens. But of course, right now, marami naman tayong pwede makatulong sa atin to somehow ease the burdens that we are having. Ayun nga, sinasabi, pwede namang equal responsibilities shared within the family. So, sa pag-aalaga ng bata, hindi na ngayon lang babae or ang nag-aalaga, nag-asikaso ng bahay. It's already a shared responsibility. Okay, another manifestation of gender bias would be subordination or political subordination. Yung kanina sinabi ko sa inyo, in a school organization, what we are trying to have would be equal participation din ng male and female. Para in the making decisions, pareho silang represented. Same with, let's say, yung buong country naman. Meron pa rin tayong subordination in political. Although lahat tayo nakakaboto, male, female, but our representations, mas marami pa rin representations ang mga lalaki. So what could be the effect? The effects could be on the decision-making process. Are they considering, kung kinukonsider ba nila yung kapakanan ng mga babae? That's why, yun nga, we are trying to have equal representation para sa decision-making, equal din. Like, hindi rin naman maganda, diba? Puro babae naman. Dahil nga, we have mentioned that gender sensitivity is not anti-male. Hindi natin tinatalo or kinakalaban ang mga lalaki. Ang tinatry lang natin gawin dito is to have equal opportunities also. So, pangit din kapag puro babae naman yung leaders natin. So, baka hindi naman natin ma-decisionan or ma-consider ang rights ng mga lalaki. Okay? So, equality would be a lot better. Okay, bakit ba tayo nagkaroon ng political subordination na yan? So why? It has started with the gender stereotypes like this. Women are weak. They are oppressed. They are known to be followers. They are second class. They are owned. So, sinasabi ko sa inyo, nagsisimula lagi sa stereotypes. Like men are strong. They can dominate. They are leaders. They are always first. They are owners. So dahil lang doon, nagkaroon na ngayon ng political subordination, like mas marami ng political powers ang mga lalaki because of those gender stereotypes, okay? So ngayon, hindi tayo strong, hindi tayo weak, hindi tayo leaders because we are male and female. We are strong, we are leaders because we are on our own. Hindi dahil sa pagiging babae or pagiging lalaki natin. Basta, it's our ability, okay? Ang vision natin for the political subordination is this one: quality, participation in decision-making process, and recognition also of capabilities of women in terms of leadership. So those are some examples of gender bias manifestations. Now, another example of gender bias manifestation would be violence against women. So this is defined as an act of instilling fear and inflicting pain with the aim to injure or abuse women. So you can see here in the graph. So now I want you to pay attention on the graph. So looking at the graph, yan, yung pink, it refers to cuts, bruises, aches. Yung orange, eye injuries, deep wounds, and then yellow, lost job and source of income. And then blue had depression, anxiety, anger. Blue attempted, yung darker blue attempted to commit suicide. And green, any of these consequences. If we will not consider the green, ano ang pinakamataas dyan? So you have physical, sexual, and physical or sexual. Ang pinakamataas dyan ay yung, anong color ba to? Light blue? Okay. Light blue had depression, anxiety, anger, and sleeplessness. So when it comes to violence, it's not only physical. There are different types of violence against women and children. So yan, meron tayong physical, sexual violence. We also have emotional abuse. We also have using isolation, minimizing, denying, and blaming. Then using children, using male privilege. Then also using economic abuse. Violence against women is not only physical. So marami yan. If you can see here, discuss natin isa-isa para makikita nyo yung gender bias manifestation or gender discrimination. So, ang violence kasi is considered to be a manifestation also of gender bias kasi ang violence, it has rooted with the notion that women are weak and men are strong. And then, yung may authority ang mga lalaki over sa mga babae. So, doon nagsimula yan sa stereotypes na yan. Kaya tayo parang ang mga babae parang they are vulnerable. So, tanggalin natin yung gender stereotype na yon. Okay? But moving on, we'll just discuss some of these types of violence. Let's say, physical violence. Yan, making her afraid by using looks, actions, gestures, smashing things, destroying. So, yung pagdadabog, yung pagtatapon ng mga gamit, that's already violence against women. Yung pagtatapon ng mga gamit sa bahay, diba, nag-away yung mag-asawa. Tapos, hindi man siya sinasaktan, pero nagtatapon ng gamit, nagsisipa ng mga bagay, that's already considered to be a physical violence. Okay. Aside from physical violence, we also have this what we call emotional abuse. Putting her down, making her feel bad about herself, calling her names, making her think she's crazy, playing mind games, humiliating her, yung pagpapahiya. So that is also considered to be violence, pero emotional abuse nga lang siya. Okay? So even isolation. Di ba, may mga nag-i-invite sa kanyang friends niya, tapos pinigilan nyo, diyan ka lang sa bahay, stay there. You cannot go outside. You cannot participate in parties. You cannot join reunions. That's already violence because you're using isolation naman. So, hinihiwalay mo siya. Para mo siyang kinukulong. Okay? Yeah, meron din tayong tinatawag na economic abuse. Preventing her from getting or keeping a job. Making her ask for money. Giving her an allowance. Taking her money. So, kinuha nyo yung, pwede rin itong maging violence against men. Like, kinuha nyo lahat ng income niya. Tapos, umingi na lang siya sa'yo. So, pwede rin yun. It's also an economic abuse. Or pwede rin pinigilan niya yung asawa niya na magtrabaho. Diyan ka na lang sa bahay. Huwag ka na magtrabaho. Bigyan na lang kita ng pera. Pero, gusto naman ng asawa niya na magtrabaho din. For economic participation, for self-fulfillment, pero hindi siya pinayagan, that's already an economic abuse. Okay, meron pa yan. Using male privilege. So, treating her like servant. Kasi nga, parang pag lalaki daw, mas may pribilehiyo. So, ganon. Using male privilege is also an example of violence against women. And pag halimbawa, may mga anak na, ginagamit na pang-threat yung mga anak, so that's already violence against women. Okay? So that is another gender bias manifestation. So here are violence against women and children manifests itself pwedeng physical, sexual, and in psychological forms. Worldwide, ito yung mga types of violence we have here, or different types of violence against women and children. Na-recognize na to ha, intimate partner violence, sexual violence and harassment, human trafficking, female genital mutilation, and child marriage. They are considered to be different types of violence against women and children. Yan. Meron din tayo ngayon, since lahat na ngayon online, this is another gender bias manifestation. Diba, it has started from objectification. Parang yung katawan ng babae ginagawang object. So, like here, in the illustration, ano yan, parang beer, tapos naka-drawing dyan yung katawan ng babae. So, that is what we call objectification. Because of that stereotypes, pwede yan mag-lead sa prostitution. And right now, yung cybersex. Okay? Nakadalasan ang mga biktima ay mga batang babae. Okay, meron na rin mga lalaking biktima ng cybersex. So, that is another gender bias manifestation. Ano na nga rin yan, para siya, kasama na rin siya sa violence. Ito. Ingat-ingat din tayo dito. Kasi another gender bias manifestation is yung pambabastos online. Now, nakarinig ako ng reklamo na may mga estudyante nagsasend ng mga pictures na hindi kaaya-aya o may touch ng kabastusan. So, bawal yun. Yan yung another gender bias manifestation na hindi naman lagi ang biktima ay mga estudyante. Sometimes teachers can also be victims. Okay? So, meron din tayong magkakaroon din kayo ng orientation on RA 11313 na ang anti-bastos law, wala nang ano yan, hindi na yan ang biktima lagi like estudyante. Ang perpetrator ay teacher, hindi na ganon. Pwede na ngayon ang biktima ay teacher, ang perpetrator ang estudyante. So, pwede yan kayong pwedeng administrative sanctions or dismissal ang mangyayari dyan. Kaya, iwas tayo dyan. So, wag maging bastos kahit na online pa yan. Okay? And online also, we can gather concrete evidences kasi madali lang naman tayo mag-screenshot ng online. Okay? So I think you will have another orientation on RA 11313 para malaman nyo rin yung mga iba't ibang type ng pambabastos. Para you are aware, and then maiwasan natin yon. Ito lang, i-share ko lang to sa inyo kasi maganda to, hello, love, goodbye. So if you can relate, they love each other. Yung lalaki gusto niya i-control yung babae para hindi na sila magkalayo, pero nilet go din niya for the fulfillment dun sa babae. So if you have partners, we also try to be supportive, kahit babae yan o lalaki, magsuportahan lang para maiwasan natin yung gender bias manifestations in our relationship. Another way is to communicate. If we have misunderstanding, hindi naman kailangan dumaan pa sa physical abuse or emotional abuse, but if you can communicate, that would be a lot better, okay? So that we can address the issues at hindi tayo magkaroon ng gender bias and discrimination and also gender-based violence. Of course, our vision is this: freedom from violence, freedom from harassment, personal development, and of course, to have control over one's body. Now, hindi lang naman sabi nila pag gender training, but parang lagi naman yan sa mga babae. Let's take a look at this one also. Male oppression. Meron din tayong gender stereotype wherein sinasabi natin lalaki has to be strong. Hindi pwedeng weak yan. Hindi pwedeng umiyak yan. Okay? If kayo, nung bata kayo, are you allowed to cry? Or kalalaki mo tao, iyak ka na iyak. Sinabihan ba kayo ng ganong ng magulang nyo? So, pag nasabihan kayo ng ganon, that is already an example of gender bias manifestation. Kasi nga doon sa gender stereotype natin na pag lalaki, they are always strong at hindi pwedeng iyakin. So, do you think that gender stereotype can lead to a big problem? What do you think? Okay, it can actually lead to a bigger problem. At ano yon? Tignan natin. Okay, I want you to look at this graph. We have here male and female suicide rates. So, saan mas mataas ang suicide rates? Sabi nila, pag sa attempted, mas mataas ang babae. According to a survey, pag attempted, mas mataas ang babae. Pero, pag yung talagang suicide, yung talaga nangyari, mas mataas ang cases ng mga lalaki. Kasi nga, they are oppressed to show their feelings. Hindi sila pwedeng maging emotional because they should be strong. So, they cannot express their emotions. In that way, wala silang mapagsabihan. So, pag hindi na nila kaya, they just commit suicide. So, that is also a gender concern. Kasi nga, mas marami din ang mga lalaki na nagkukumit ng suicide. Bakit kaya? Yun nga, because we are trained or they are trained to be strong na hindi maging emotional. Yan, boys and men are not expected to need closeness, reassurance, attention. If a boy or man asks for help, they are seen to be weak. Okay? So, yan yung stereotype natin na hindi equal or hindi fair para sa mga lalaki. I would like to share you this one. Never apologize for being sensitive or emotional. Let this be a sign that you've got a big heart and aren't afraid to let others see it. Showing your emotions is a sign of strength. So, tandaan natin yun ha. Okay lang na mag-express ng emotion. Huwag natin kimkimin yan para hindi tayo mag-lead to suicide. Okay, another gender bias manifestation naman sa mga lalaki. Why doctors are worried over male rape cases in Nairobi, wherein doctors are worried that men may not be sincere about being raped by women. So, totoo rin na may mga rape cases daw. Kaya lang, dahil nga parang nakakahiya na lalaki ang na-rape, so may mga unreported cases na rape cases ng mga lalaki. So, that is also a gender bias manifestation kasi pwede rin hindi sila pinaniniwalaan. Okay? Because nga, sa stereotype na sinasabing, men are actually stronger. So, paano sila marirape ng babae? Okay? Okay, so that ends my discussion about gender bias manifestations. So, there are so many examples na makikita nyo kung meron ng gender bias. We have started from the educational setup and then outside education na pwedeng, di ba, in your relationship with your partner or pwede siyang home setup. Then you can now recognize if there would be gender bias manifestations which could lead to gender-based violence. Okay? As I have mentioned, in education, our role is to eliminate gender stereotypes. Kasi yun yung ugat ng gender inequality, gender discrimination, and gender bias. So, I hope we have contributed in increasing the awareness about this matter and also para ma-reorient kayo so that, yun nga, sama-sama nating ma-attain ang gender equality. Thank you very much for listening, and kung may questions kayo, just comment down below and then we will try to answer your questions. Okay, I hope you have learned something and also share this knowledge so that you can also contribute in eliminating gender stereotypes so that we can all together we can attain gender equality and also we will have respect to everyone regardless of gender. Okay? Bye everyone.
Everyone, students, fellow teachers, and parents. I am Dr. Eden T. Beltran, the Gender and Development and Extension Services of our university, the President Ramon Magsaysay State University in Iba, Zambales, Philippines. My task today is to discuss the legal framework of the Governance, Gender and Development Program. As you know, Gender and Development Program is the perspective and process that is participatory, empowering, equitable, sustainable, and free from violence, respectful of human rights, and supportive of self-determination and actualization of human potentials. This program applies the GAD framework in the policies, human resource management, projects, and activities of the government to promote the goals of equality, equity, and empowerment of women and other sectors in the margins. The government, being the duty bearer, adopts gender and development for the realization, the fulfillment or provision, respect, promotion, and protection of the rights of women and other marginalized sectors in our society. As to why gender issues are human rights issues, it is true that the basic inequality of genders as to access to, control, and enjoyment of power, resources, and benefits, as well as opportunities, is a violation of human rights principle of non-discrimination, equality, and universality. The process of achieving the realization of human rights involved accountability, good governance, independence of judiciary, and people's participation and transparency. The law holds that the state affirms the role of women in nation building and ensures the substantive equality of men and women. It condemns all forms of violation. And in our laws, okay, we are talking about laws here. So in our country, the paramount law of the land is the Philippine Constitution, which was ratified in 1987. All other laws in this country must conform to the provisions of the Constitution, and this include the international law, national legislations or the Republic Acts, presidential issuances, as well as the local laws. Okay. This represents the framework of our gender and development program in this country. There are so many laws, so I will delve immediately into the laws. First of all, I want to tackle the international mandates. The GAD program of the government is basically based on the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, the very basic provisions of our GATT laws are based on this declaration, as well as on the other UN issuance or UN treaty, which is known as CEDAW, or Conventions on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women. So the CEDAW promotes equality in all fields. These are affirmative actions for women and protection of women from violence. And this went through series of reviews, and it is being observed in almost all countries. In our own constitution, in section 14, article 2, it is provided that the state recognizes the role of women in nation building and shall ensure the fundamental equality before the law of women and men. And based on this, a series of laws were passed. First of which is a framework for development, which covers the period 1989 to 1992. It was known as PDPW. This is the Philippine Development Plan for Women. And this was also adopted by passing other laws. The first highlighted law, which was hallmark of legislation in the Philippines, is the Republic Act 7192 rather. Women in Development and Nation Building Act of 1992 provides for government to incorporate women's and gender concerns in development agenda. The specific provisions of the RA 7192 included equal capacity of men to borrow and obtain loans, equal access to credit and other non-monetary resources as incorporators, and married women's equal rights with men in applying for passports, secure visas, and other travel documents, whereas before they had none. They had to secure the permission of their spouses. And then there was this also long-term plan, which covered 1995 up to actually 2025, the PPGRD, which is the Philippine Plan for Gender Responsive Development. It updates the version of, it is the updated version of the PDPW. And it serves as the successor plan, which covers a long-term goals and upon which various programs of the government were based. EO 273 approves and adopts the PPGRD for implementation, and the General Appropriations Act for more than a decade has provided the allocation of 5% of the total agency budget for gender responsive development projects. The next major law is the Magna Carta of Women, which is a law that we should be all proud of because only a few countries have a similar law. What are the salient features of the Magna Carta of Women? The MCW defines discrimination against women pursuant to the CEDAW, or the Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women by the United Nations. It espouses a policy of gender mainstreaming and declares the rights of women as human rights. It ensures the equitable participation and representation of women in government, political parties, civil service, and the private sector. It affords equal opportunities of women in education, employment, livelihood, social protection, and others, including women in the military. So since this is the Magna Carta of Women, it strengthens also the body in the government previously known as the National Commission on the Role of Philippine Women, which was then renamed as Philippine Commission on Women, which creates all these rules and regulations on how to implement the uh, gender and development program of the government. Also, the Magna Carta of Women creates Human Rights Commission as body, creates mandates for the human rights creation, uh, for the Commission of Human Rights rather, to handle women's rights concerns and to provide violations for such, uh, provide penalties for such violations. So what are the specific provisions of the Magna Carta of Women? It provides protection from all forms of violence against women, protection and security in times of disaster, calamities, and other crisis situation. It provides participation and representation, equal treatment before the law, equal access and elimination of discrimination against women in education, scholarships, and trainings. Also, the Magna Carta of Women provides for equal participation in sports, in employment in fields of military, police, and other services. It provides for non-discriminatory and non-derogatory portrayal of women in media and film. It provides comprehensive health services and health information and education. It provides for leave benefits and equal rights in all matters relating to marriage and family relations. So here is another law. Probably all of you already know this. RA 9262 is the anti-violence against women and their children. The definition of BAUC is provided in this law, which is supposed to cover all forms of violence against women and their children, or the domestic violence. And according to this law, there are 4 types of violence prohibited. These are physical violence, sexual violence, psychological violence, and economic violence. Baka hindi nyo pa alam yan. Economic violence is when the right to support of the children is being denied by one of the parties, either the man or the woman, because this is an obligation. And then we have all these other laws, no, that support the promotion and fulfillment of the rights of women in particular. Bakit women lang? Because women are a marginalized sector. No? And for example, the Barangay Daycare Center Act is there to help women take care of their children and also free them from childcare so that they can also pursue economic activities. And then you have the RA 6725, or the Anti-Sexual Discrimination in Employment. And 7877 is the Anti-Sexual Harassment Law, which was then amended by the recently passed RA 11313, or the Safe Spaces Act, which I will discuss later on. And then the Republic Act 9208, which is the Anti-Trafficking in Person Act. We have RA 7610, which is the Special Protection of Children, RA 8353, or the Anti-Rape Law, and the supplemental law of RA 8505, which is the Rape Victim Assistance and Protection Act of 2008. Also, passed was RA 7655, which increased the minimum wage of domestic helpers. And then the declaration of March 8 as National Women's Day in RA 6949. And RA 7322 increases the maternity benefits of women in the private sector. RA 6955 outlawed the practice of matching Filipino women for marriage to foreign nationals in a mail order basis. And RA 7688 gives representation to women in the Social Security Commission. 8042 mandates the state to apply gender-sensitive criteria in the formulation and implementation of policies and programs affecting migrant workers. 7600 provides incentive to all government and private health institutions with rooming in and breastfeeding practices. RA 7160 provides for women representation in the local policymaking through provincial and municipal development council. We have a lot of laws. So, Civil Service Commission Memorandum Circular number 14 series of 1989 enables government workers, especially women, to adopt flexible working hours. Executive number 209 is our civil code. Local government code made it mandatory for local development council or sanggunian to have a representative for the women's sector. And this is an OLO DNR admin binder number 4 series of 1991 mandates that both spouses can now be awarded civil certificate of stewardship contract. So it's no longer the men who are eligible. What are the other laws on and for women? RA 10354 is the Responsible Parenthood and Reproductive Health Act of 2012. RA 10361 is the Domestic Workers Act or Batas Kasambahay. RA 9995 is the Anti-Ortho Video Voyeurism Act of 2009. RA 9501 is the Magna Carta for micro, small, and medium enterprises. RA 8369 is the Family Courts Act of 1997. And RA 8187 is the Paternity Leave Act of 1996. We all know those laws. And so now let us focus on one specific law, which is RA 8972 or the Solo Parents Welfare Act of 2000. This is the act providing for benefits and privileges to solo parents and their children and appropriating funds therefore. It was passed in November 2000. The solo parent is defined as any individual who falls under the following category. A woman who gives birth as a result of rape. A parent left solo or alone with the responsibility of parenthood due to the death of a spouse. While the spouse is detained or serving sentence, the spouse who is left behind is also considered a solo parent. Or due to physical and mental incapacity of the other spouse will become a solo parent. Due to the legal separation or de facto separation of spouse for at least 1 year, as long as he is entrusted with the custody of the children. And also due to the declaration of nullity of marriage, the one who has custody is a solo parent under the law. And due to abandonment of spouse of for at least 1 year. So unmarried mother and father who has preferred to keep and rear their children instead of having others do that for them or give them up to welfare institutions. And any other persons who solely provided parental care and support to a child or children. So those are the solo parents. And what are the benefits under the law? The parental leave is another law which grants a solo parent employee who has rendered at least 1 year of service with 7 working days. And this is not cumulative. This is the parental leave law. Every year, a solo parent can access this benefit from the law. A requirement for the availment of the parental leave, the one who applies for it must have at least 1 year of service, which is continuous, and must have notified the employer within the reasonable time, and also must have the solo parent ID, which is obtained from the MSWDO. Okay, so not all are solo parent. You have to have the recognition from the government agency. Okay. A solo parent may avail of parental leave with pay in the following circumstances: when the child gets ill, when he or she needs to attend a parent PTA meeting in school for an enrollment purposes, other circumstances necessary in the performance of parental duties and responsibilities where physical presence is required. And as to the flexible work schedule of the solo parent, the work week of 48 hours in 6 days is compressed for 5 days, which is approximately 9.6 hours per day from Monday to Friday, without payment of overtime in exchange for additional day off in a week. This is for the private sector. An employer shall provide for flexible work schedule. That's what the law provides. And also, work discrimination is prohibited. No employer shall discriminate a solo parent or employee with respect to terms and conditions of employment on account of his or her being a solo parent. And the termination of the leave benefit is provided in terms of on occasion uh, of the circumstances no longer present that qualifies a person to become a solo parent. When these circumstances are no longer present, so then the benefits and as well as the status of a person being a solo parent is terminated. Okay, so this is some sort of a chart pertaining to the solo parent. What are the other laws passed by the 17th Congress? What is the 17th Congress? Ito yung panahon ni Duterte. So these are the laws that were passed during the 17th Congress. The expanded maternity leave law, and then we have already mentioned about the Safe Streets and Public Spaces law, the Anti-Hospital Deposit Law, which is an amended law, and then the Kalusugan at Nutrisyon ng Magnanay Law, and then the 4Ps Law. Okay, let's talk a bit about each of these laws. The Expanded Maternity Leave Law, or RA 11210, is an act increasing the maternity leave period to 105 days. So dati, 2 buwan lang. Now it's 105 days for female workers with an option to extend for another 30 days without pay. So meaning you can, if you're a woman who gave birth, you can extend up to 105 days, but the additional 30 days is without pay. And if you're a solo parent, you have the option to have an additional 15 days, and also this is without pay. So ibig sabihin, if a solo parent gives birth, the total maximum number of days would be 150 days. Okay, but of course the ones which are paid is only 105 days. Yung karagdagan hindi nakasama doon sa may bayad. Okay, and then here is the implementing rules and regulations of RA 11210. And okay, you can read about that in the law. And then we have RA 11313, which you already know, but I would like to discuss it a bit so that we can clarify the issues, like, because before we had an anti-sexual harassment law, which was RA 7877. The difference between that law and this law, RA 11313, is that the earlier law covers only sexual harassment done in school and employment spaces. Okay, in work, at work, when you are when you are a victim of sexual harassment at work, you are protected by that law. But outside these two contexts, what are the two contexts? Education and employment related sexual harassment. Outside this, there is no protection from the law. So that is why RA 11313 was passed. So RA 11313 is the expanded sexual harassment law. So what does this law provide? That uh, it provides, of course, for violation of certain acts that are prohibited. For example, the acts of stalking. This is prohibited for the first offense hanggang 30 days, no? And then there is a fine of 30,000. Okay? And you have to attend a gender sensitivity seminar like this one. And then if it is committed again for the second time, you can be imprisoned for 1 month and 1 day to 6 months with a fine of 50,000. Kaya wag nang uulitin. But if you're makulit, you have third offense, you can be arrested, you can be confined, arresto mayor, to its maximum period, and a fine of 100,000. Okay, what are the other types of gender-based online sexual harassment prohibited under 11313? So these are the some of those that are prohibited. So the law prohibits terrorizing and intimidating victims through physical, psychological, and emotional threats online. Unwanted sexual, misogynistic, transphobic, homophobic, and sexist remarks and other comments online, whether publicly or through direct and private messages. Invasion of privacy through cyber stalking and incessant messaging. Uploading and sharing any form of media that contains photos, voice, or videos with a sexual content without the consent of the victim. Unauthorized recording, sharing, and any other victims' photos, videos, or any uh, information online. Impersonating identities of the victims online, or posting lies about the victims to harm their reputation. And filing false abuse report online platforms to silence the victims. So the penalties for these prohibited acts are 2 years and 4 months, and 1 day to 6 years and 2 months, or a fine of 100,000 to 500,000, or both. Okay, this is very serious. So you should know about this. You should read further about what the law prohibits. What are the duties of the school heads under the law? The school has the duty to disseminate the information on the provisions of the law, provides measures to prevent gender-based sexual harassment in education institution, and to create a committee on decorum and investigation to address complaints of gender-based sexual harassment. So if the school fails to do this, meron siyang liability. For non-implementation of duty, there is a fine of 5,000 to 10,000. And for failure to act is 10,000 to 15,000. Okay. So that's it. So what are those acts that are prohibited? You have catcalling, yung mga sipol-sipol dyan. And then you have misogynistic, yung mga comments na uh, laban sa mga iba't ibang genders, no? Yung homophobic, no? So ang the bottom line is we have to have respect for others. And then ito pa yung mga tawag natin sa kanila, yung mga nagma-masturbate o nagpapakita ng kanilang ari, no, ng hipo. These are covered by the law. So even if regardless of the place where it is committed, they are already penalized by the law. Dati walang coverage sa public space. Now, both all all places are covered by the law. Except of course the inside the house. Iba na yun. So RA 10932 is the Enhanced Anti-Hospital Deposit Law. So bawal maningil ng deposito ang mga hospital or clinic bago magbigay ng basic emergency services sa pasyente. So hindi covered nitong law na ito yung mga para sa skincare, pag you know, kung ayaw kayong bigyan ng ng beauty care, yung tawag liposuction, hindi naman po emergency kasi yun. So, dito, bawal maningin ng deposito sa pasyente. Okay? So, it is unlawful for hospital, both public and private, to solicit, request, demand, or accept a deposit. So, the violation of this particular provision will warrant the penalty of 6 months and 1 day of imprisonment, but not more than 2 years and 4 months against the doctor or official, or a fine not less than 100,000 and not more than 300,000. So, who are liable? These are the officers or directors of clinics or hospitals who will violate the provision of 10932. 4 to 6 years of imprisonment yan, and up to a fine of 500,000, but not more than 1 million kapag doktor yung liable. Okay? So, dapat tandaan, under this law, bawal maningil ng deposito. So, kung walang ambulansyang hospital, maaaring gamitin ang emergency vehicle ng LGU. Kinukonsiderang emergency case ang panganganak o yung pag may nakunan. Dapat ipaskil ang mga serbisyo na kanilang pinibigay sa entrance ng hospital. And presumption of liability to a hospital kapag may namatay. Okay? At mas mataas ng parusa para sa paglabag na ito, ng batas na ito. Okay, we come to another law. This is the kalusugan at nutrisyon ng magnanay law. So the first 100 days of the life of the child is now covered by law. Okay, this was passed under the Duterte administration because it is said that the first 1,000, not 100 pala, the first 1,000 days is the period of rapid growth where nutrient deficiencies can have long-term consequences. That's why the government is there to provide support to its citizens in the form of this law. So here is another law, yung 4-piece law. So this is the Pantawid Pamilyang Pilipino Program, or the RA 11310. So this provides financial aid to poor household that meet the qualifications to improve what? To improve their health, nutrition, and education. And this was passed into law by President Duterte. Under this law, the government will provide conditional cash transfer. So may ATM sila for a maximum period of 7 years. Okay? And among those who are qualified are farmers, fishermen, homeless families, indigenous people, those from the informal sector, and those living in isolated and disadvantaged areas, including places without electricity. What are the qualifications? So those that are classified as poor and near poor by the DSWD, and the poverty threshold issued by the Philippine Statistics Authority at the time of the selection. That members have members that are newborn up to 18 years old, as well as those with pregnant members at the time of registration. And they are willing to comply with the conditions set by the law. What are the conditions? So, not lower than 300 per child enrolled in daycare and elementary program for a maximum of 10 months a year. So merong stipend, no? Not lower than 7,000 per child enrolled in high school per month for a maximum of 10 months in a year. And then health and nutrition grant not lower than 750 a month. So mayaman na sila for a maximum of 12 years. But you know, this cash transfer is very specific as to its goal, which is to improve the health, nutrition, and educational status of poor people. Persons who will be found falsifying their information in the registry so that they can just get the cash, may be imprisoned for a month up to a year, and may be fined with not less than 10,000 but not more than 100,000. Okay, so those are the laws at the national level. But you know, in our university, we have our own law. Kasi dami-daming kasing mga batas pertaining to gender. But we have also endeavored because the PRIMSU is a state university, you have to comply with all those laws that have been mentioned earlier. So we have actually a GAD code, or the compilation of policies pertaining to gender issues and within the university. So some of these are on this slide. So part 4 of the GAD code of our university contains provisions on the GAD focal point system. No? Here we find that there are provisions governing international linkages. And then for the establishment of the Zambales GAD Resource Center and GAD Data Banking System. Also, the policy provides that instruction should be gender fair, and we should have gender responsive research program, gender responsive extension program, and student services, as well as human resource policy. So this is a good practice in our university. So we have a lot of activities all throughout the year, and maybe the other speakers will also elaborate on some of those. You know, gender and development laws are passed and implemented by the Philippine government in order that we as a nation achieve development that is participatory and empowering, equitable, sustainable, free from violence, respectful of human rights, supportive of self-determination and actualization of human potentials of those particularly who are in the margins. Thank you for listening. So let me borrow a few minutes of your time so that we can learn about gender sensitivity. So the content of my presentation are as follows. These are the basic concepts of gender and development. So what are sex and gender? How are they distinguished from one another? Sex and gender roles, gender stereotypes, gender discrimination and bias, gender issues, gender equity and equality, and gender and development. my presentation is just like a dictionary. So bear with me because this will be discussed further by the other speakers. Okay, so sex and gender, you probably already know the distinction. So sex is biological. It refers to the physiological characteristics of organisms, male and female, and this is biologically determined. While gender is a social or cultural and psychological construction. It has something to do with femininity and masculinity. These are subjective feelings of maleness and femaleness, irrespective of one's sex. It may refer to gender identity. Gender refers to the socially and culturally constructed differences between men and women, as distinct from sex, which is biological. The social constructs vary from one country to another, and through time, they also vary. Social construction of gender. This refers to how society values and allocates duties, roles, and responsibilities to women, men, girls, and boys. Okay. In this illustration, you can see that babies are given roles already. So they are envisioned to become certain to assume certain careers when they grow up. So in this illustration, you can see that the baby boy is destined to become a lawyer or an engineer or a soldier or something that has something to do with transportation or maybe play basketball. While the baby girl here is envisioned to be a homemaker. So, mommy, and to take care of all the housework. So you can already distinguish the roles of babies as assigned to them by society. Social construction of gender is the differentiation of valuing, and this creates the gender division of labor and determines the differences in access to and benefit and decision making, which in turn influences power relations and reinforces the gender roles of men and women. So here you can see the difference between the household of one wherein there is sharing of housework and the roles being assigned to male and female. But here you can see that the man is assigned the work traditionally assigned to women. That is something very very out of the ordinary for many households who are which are patriarchal. So roles refer to the occupation or biological function for which a necessary qualification is to belong to one particular sex. For example, pregnancy or breastfeeding. This is female sex roles. These are female sex roles because only females can do this. Okay. While gender roles are learned behaviors, these are taught to individuals and they are conditioned to perceive certain activities and tasks and responsibility um, as bagay lang to males and females. So they are already stereotyped roles for men and women. So sexual division of labor is rooted in what is technically known as production and reproduction distinction. What that means is that the roles are related to the physiological function of male and females. So, meaning, for example, the job of a teacher is associated with rearing of children, di ba? Si ina ng tahanan is the ilaw ng tahanan, which when you go out to the larger society, ito yung pagiging teacher ng babae o kaya pagiging nurse or uh, similar occupations that are associated with the traditional house household management role of the women assigned to her by society. So the social construction of gender is done at various levels of gender socialization, which involves the social institutions. So there, you already know what the social institutions are. These are family, of course, and then the church, you have the school, and then you have industry, government, and the media. Okay, but at this point, you should distinguish sex from gender by saying that sex is physiological and inborn. So it's biological, while gender is socially constructed. And because of that, sex can be changed, cannot be changed, no? While gender can be changed or it is changeable. When we say that sex cannot be changed, it's only women who can give birth. At this point, given the technology that we have, and only men can produce sperm. Okay? While gender, women can do traditionally male jobs, and men also can take care of children and do other household chores. So what are gender roles? So you know already, you now have a clue what gender roles are. So gender roles are reflected in activities ascribed to women and men on the basis of their perceived differences, which are reinforced through gender division of labor. So take note that the differences are only perceived but not inborn, okay? The perception is dependent on who has the power in society and can dictate what the perception should be. This arises from socialization of individuals from the earliest stages of life through identification with characteristics associated with being a male and a female. So the roles are divided into these ones, no? Production, reproduction, community management, and leisure activities. Okay, for productive roles, these are the roles wherein as someone gets paid, no? These are activities in the generation of marketable goods, values, and services. While reproduction has something to do with giving birth, reproduction of the species, no? To reproduce labor and to care for and maintain the household. No? So kasama na dyan yung pag-aalaga ng may sakit, no? Sana walang COVID, no? At pag-aalaga ng mga matatanda. No? That is those roles are reproductive roles. While community management roles are activities that produce results for communities' collective consumption, use, or benefits. So dito, kasama dito yung mga barangay meeting, meeting ng simbahan, meeting sa school, PTA meeting, etc., and similar activities. While leisure are those activities that have something to do with they don't have anything to do with production and reproduction, but they have something to do with rest and recreation. Okay, so there are four. Take note that there are four gender roles. So what is gender discrimination? So gender discrimination is the differential treatment, no, of individuals on the basis of their gender. So many societies involve systemic and structural discrimination against women. What we mean by this systemic is it should be manifested in their lives, no, in their laws, in their norms and customs. And then when we say structural, it's already part of their procedures, you know, your regulations, etc. Okay. And in the distribution of income, access to resources, participation in decision making, we see the distinction between men and women's participation, okay, and access. Prejudicial treatment on the basis of gender stereotype is also a manifestation of gender discrimination, which is explained in detail by another speaker. So at this point, what is the difference between sex and gender? Let me see if you can tell. If we say that women give birth to babies and men do not, is that sex or gender? Okay, so that one is an idea belonging to sex, no, or physiological. Little girls are gentle, boys are rough. That is a gender concept. And according to UN statistics, women do 67% of the world's work. Yet they earn only about 10% of the world's income. That is also a gender concern. In the rural areas, women are paid lower than the wage of men. You know how much lower? They earn generally less than 50% of what the men get paid for. Then the women can breastfeed babies. Men can bottle feed babies. This is sex because only women have mammary glands. But you know the men feeding their infants with bottles, that is a product of the reform society already has taken. Kasi dati, the men cannot be assigned reproductive roles. But this time, where we already perceive equality, even in the laws, no, and then sensitivity among men, they don't mind taking household work and work that is associated with childcare. Most building site workers in the Philippines are men. This is a gender concept. In ancient Egypt, men stayed at home and did weaving. Women handled family business, and women inherited property. Men did not. This is also gender. Men's voices break at puberty, women's do not. So this is sex. And in one study of 224 cultures, there were five in which men did all the cooking and 36 in which women did all the house building. This is gender. And in one document, a child who has been brought up as a girl then learned that he was actually a boy and his marks improved dramatically. So this is gender. But did you know that in our country, in the pre-colonial times, women were enjoying equality with men, and that it may surprise you, but there are evidences that documents that prove that women controlled the property in those pre-colonial uh, times. So what is gender stereotype? Gender stereotypes are those structured set of beliefs about personal attributes, behavior, roles of a specific social group. Gender stereotypes are biased and often exaggerated images of women and men, which are used repeatedly in everyday life. Gender division of labor, on the other hand, relates to different types of work that men and women do as a consequence of their socialization and accepted patterns of work within a given context. Gender equity is the process uh, of being fair to women and men. To ensure fairness, measures must often be available to compensate for historical and social disadvantages that prevent women and men from otherwise operating in a level playing field. So that is gender equity. This is leveling the means to achieving something ideal, which is equality. How do you enable women to achieve level field with the men? Um, that's what you do when you are equitable. For instance, how women are treated at work. Okay? And gender equality is the absence of discrimination on the basis of a person's sex in authority, opportunities, allocation of resources or benefits, and access to services. It is therefore the equal valuing of society of both the similarities and differences between men and women and the varying roles they play. So, what is gender issue? A gender issue on the, at this point is that condition of gender inequality that is undesirable and therefore requires an intervention. This results from gender discrimination or oppression. A gender issue arises when there is inequality. That is what you have to remember. If there is inequality between and among genders, a gender issue arises. And so therefore, inequality or differentiated treatment of individuals or a group of people purely on the basis of social expectations and attributes of gender are undesirable. And therefore, there must be intervention to address them. So gender issues are sometimes called gender concerns. An example of a gender issue is gender-based violence, okay, or uh, gender-based discrimination at work. Now, at this point, I want you to take a break from the terms, the definition of terms from the dictionary. So let us watch a short film by the United Nations. So this film is, well, the slide says you are challenged to identify the gender issues in the film. Okay, let us just, since this is an online activity, let us just watch and enjoy the film. So take note of the gender issues and then recall carefully the issues during the film viewing. And then, yes, since this has been processed by many batches of participants, uh, engaging in this activity, we have already identified the issues, and there are actually more than 20 issues featured in this film. Okay, here is the film. The title of the film is Impossible Dream. Enjoy it. So I will just disappear for a while. Is that an issue? Is that an issue? Now, there's another issue. Is that an issue? That must be an issue. I wonder if you can hear the audio of this film. That is definitely an issue. That's another issue. What are the issues in this film? Nakakapagod, di ba? Okay, it's time to sleep. Ay, hindi pa pala. Mag-iinom na tayo. Si nanay naman ay magpa-plancha. At si ate ay magliligpit sa kusina. Aroy. Okay, there are a lot of issues in that film. It's so burdens the heart that we can still relate with some of the issues. Well, these are the issues. Okay, multiple burden of women, meaning remember the gender roles, the four type of work. These are done by women um, all at the same time. So the woman is working while at the same time being the manager of her household. And mainly women are responsible for reproductive work. And then the careers of children are the carers of children are women. Women are deprived of rest and leisure. The use and manage the use and management of women's income is primarily for the family's benefit, while the men's has allotment for rest and recreation. So men also control the flow of information. So dito na nakita ng mga ibang participants na si tatay ang nagpapatay ng TV. Okay? And then men decide on what changes to adopt. So little boys are also socialized into the same patriarchal value as their fathers, and the mother seems to reinforce and this arrangement. And then the general socialization of children, they will do after what they are after the tasks being done by their role models, which are their fathers, their mothers, their ates and kuyas. And then another issue is violence against women and harassment of women at work. And then also notice that the boss in the video is a man, mainly. Okay. And you also have the issue of unequal pay for equal work, an equal mode of production. Men's production is mechanized while women's is manual. Women cannot be fully productive because they have to care for children while working. Men decide on what changes to adopt, and women are forced to assume responsibilities beyond their capacity. Okay, I think there are more issues in that film that the participants and even I didn't see. So it's up to you to analyze it. You can watch it from YouTube. What is gender issue? Again, gender issue is a point of inequality that is undesirable and therefore requires an intervention. It is a form of gender discrimination or oppression, and it arises from inequity or differentiated treatment of an individual or a group of people purely on the basis of their social expectation and attributes of gender. So at this point, what is gender sensitivity? So gender sensitivity is the ability to recognize the gender issue. That is how it is simply defined. So if you're able to already identify the issues as you see them around you, you are then gender sensitive, especially women's different perceptions and interests arising from their unique social location and gender roles. And this sensitivity also calls for understanding and consideration of the socio-cultural factors underlying discrimination based on sex, whether against women, men, or other genders. So look at this slide where you see um, if you are sensitive to gender issue, you already see many issues on this slide. So what are the issues here? So here you see that children are given different toys to play with, which will also teach them how to be like. Look at the boy looking at the girl. He wants to play probably with the dolls, but society prohibits him from doing so. So he is confined to his boring to his boring car toys. No, while the girl is also the same. So the girl is restricted from playing other kinds of toys that society allows her to play with. And then look at this picture of the can and the bottle that contains perfume. They are commercialized, sexualized images of men. No? Okay, and then uh, look at the roles being assigned to um, boys and girls. And then there is this very controversial, how do you call this, ad on EDSA. That was early 2000. And then it was so controversial because what it says here, nakatikim ka na ba ng 15 anyos? So the ad was about a particular brandy. Okay. And but the implication is that a woman is being commercialized here. So so the woman is being commodified. Is kasi yung 15 anyos, 'di ba? At saka yung nakatikim, but parang may implication na ano, na sexual. And so here we can see that the issues are gender stereotyping and gender bias. Okay? Lumilipat-lipat yung. And then you also have gender discrimination, gender commodification, objectification, and the sexualization of the woman's body. Okay? So gender sensitivity is a frame of mind. Okay? So it is in the mind, it is a set of attitude. And the way we approach whatever we do within our intimate relationship, in our work, in our everyday transaction with the outside world, what goes on in our mind will manifest in the way we behave, in the way we talk, and sometimes in the absence of sensitivity, perpetuates inequality in our society. And then discrimination is a serious issue because from this stems forth a lot of problems like violence against women or bullying or those issues that we see around us every day. So gender sensitivity, however, is not aware of the sexes. It is not anti-male. Actually, it's a recognition that in practically all cultures, women have a lower status. So here you begin to see women being empowered by the media, but again, there are many misconceptions being communicated by some of these images. So we began to raise daughters more like sons, but few have the courage to raise our sons like daughters. So still the issue of unequal pay for equal work is a big issue. So when you graduate, you will experience this unequal status of women and men in the world of work. Because sabi nga nila, merong inequality sa kanilang sa position ng babae at lalaki. So yung bilang ng CEOs na babae ay limited dahil dun sa stereotypes, no? They are prevented from breaking the what do you call this? That structure being fixed already, that kapag boss yan, dapat lalaki. But we have to change this stereotype because this actually is not doing benefit to society. Because what if the woman being discriminated against has talents or solutions better than men? I mean, when we promote people, it has to be based on actual qualifications and capacities, not based on stereotypes in our minds. So at this point, let's talk about the concept of gender and development. So gender and development are interrelated. No? How are they interrelated? Development is the concept of referring to the process of achieving a better quality of life, a higher standard of living. So this is something economic. It's measured by GNP, GDP, poverty index, wage, and income. And also measured in terms of human development, like literacy, life expectancy, health, nutrition, and housing. So these are the parameters of development. And how do we relate the concept of gender to the process of development? Here we have the distinction between sex and gender. But here we see many issues of gender discrimination and lack of responsiveness to gender issue. But if we are sensitive, we will try to achieve women's empowerment, women being able to participate in the process of development at par with their men counterpart. And at this point, we also are concerned about the issues of the other genders, no, like the LGBT, who also suffer some form of discrimination, and also, like women, are marginalized. So, because we can then recognize all these issues, we can mainstream gender in development. So, as to achieve the so-called what? Equality and gender equity. First is gender equity, so that we can enable men and women and other gender to be at par in achieving development for this country. In conclusion, gender sensitivity being the ability to perceive existing gender differences, issues, and equalities, and incorporate this in strategies and actions in the economy. And gender responsiveness is the ability to do planning and implementation of activities that meet the gender needs and address gender issues and concerns that allow gender equality to happen. So these are the basic gender concepts that also are related to the concept of women empowerment. Meron pa palang umabot. So women empowerment refers to the provision, availability, and accessibility of opportunities, services, and observance of women's human rights, which will enable women to actively participate and contribute to political, economic, social, and cultural development of the nation, as well as those which shall provide them equal access to ownership, management, control of production, and of material and informational, and the benefit in the family, community, and society. So, gender equality means that men and women enjoy the same status and condition and have equal opportunity for realizing their potential to contribute to those aspects of social life. And they shall also benefit equally from the results of development. While gender equity refers to the means beyond a focus of equal treatment. It means giving those who have less on the basis of needs and taking steps to compensate for the historical and social disadvantages that prevent them from otherwise operating on a level playing field. This is all for now. So this is your gender and development and Extension Services Director saying good day to everyone. Thank you for listening.